if you're thinking about, something negative, eventually you think about like, oh, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. The thought lingers in your mind long enough that you start behaving as a person who wasn't good at what you think you're not good at. And eventually you start feeling the pain of your bad thoughts that is translated into bad actions. Now let's do this. Think about one of the most beautiful memories of your life. Just for 2 seconds, or even 5, even 10. Think about one of the most beautiful memories of your life and close your eyes. Do you know why I'm smiling? Because some memories just bring me joy. Some memories bring me peace. And now, if you keep on repeating the process of good memory, it crystallizes into an action, and the action may be smiling. The action may be just being joyful, just being more generous. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Unbounded Growth podcast. My name is Marc-Alain Muteba, and I'm your host. And today, so excited, so thrilled that we are starting finally a new book that's called Winning the War in Your Mind. And the book was written by Pastor Craig Groeschel, who's the pastor, I believe, of Life Church, or church that has multi-campus. But he also is a host of a podcast, and I believe we try to put the link to his podcast. His podcast is mostly about leadership, communication, personal development, things of that nature. And he's a very great gentleman. Now, this is our 9th episode of the 3rd season, and for the last few weeks that we were together, of course, we've been on and off because of everything that's been going on in our lives. And as I promised, I was we're really trying to get with Adam today so we can record the first episode of this new book. Unfortunately, Adam lost his recording equipment, and because we are recording remotely, it was kind of challenging for us to kind of put it together. But he's looking for it. We're trying to make some effort so that he can be here next time. Before we get started, just want to talk about something that maybe we mentioned on our social media, and I just wanted to bring it back to you here. We finally were able to secure a sponsor. She's a realtor, a really good one. Her name is Judith, and Judith is one of the most wonderful realtors I've ever worked with. She's helped countless of families here in the DFW Metroplex to live their dream, as you know, the American dream. Get a house, get yourself into a household, and she's there for your negotiation. And even if you are an investor and trying to get into the real estate investment, she can also help you achieve that. Why do we need sponsors? Of course, to keep this episode coming to you for free. That's what the desires. We are trying. We really said, Adam and I, when we started working together, and we really wanted to bring as much out as we could. We wanted to keep this content free. Of course, we read books, we gain the knowledge, but we still want to share this knowledge for free. And the only way we can do that and keep this episode coming to you for free is, of course, through sponsorship to help us sustain some of the costs that goes on with running a podcast. But most importantly, the vision and the goal that we've always had to help children. We have a desire, for example, to furnish some libraries in South Dallas where Adam teaches some and volunteers. And he told me some of these libraries literally are lacking books. And if we can do as little as coming to help them with furnishing them with books, helping kids whose parents are not able to afford, little things like uniform, books before they return to school, just help as much as we can to those kids, and especially in the Congo as well. It allows us to give out scholarships to children to help those who need education, and those that we've been trying to help in the last few weeks, or mostly since we started. And we want to give out a shout out to all our sponsors, all the people that have been supporting us since we started with Unbounded Growth. Even this year, we received a donation, I believe it was $70 about 2 weeks ago. That has allowed us to finish up the tuition of one of the 4 kids that we are currently sending to school, and just helping them to become better leader for tomorrow and for their society. So how does this sponsorship work? Every referral, like if you purchase your house in the DFW Metroplex or in the United States through Judith, she gives us a commission, right? Out of what you purchase. You have nothing to lose. All you have to tell her, I found you on Unbounded Growth. I was referred to you by Unbounded Growth, and we get a little commission. It's not too much, but it's great. It's a great anything that's given. And of course, our donation page is up. If you want also to support us, you are always welcome to do it. All right. So, as I was saying, this book that we are going to start today by Pastor Craig Groeschel, Winning the War in Your Mind, we say that we thought it was good to talk about this book for a few reasons. The book that we just finished up, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. The book is great into kind of giving you a revelation about this is what your thoughts can do, right? It tells you a step by step about the things that you can achieve and cannot achieve. Like things like, some of these sicknesses that are caused by your thoughts, some type of depression are simply caused by the way you think. And if you can correct your thought, it can help you along the way. It can help you down the line to overcome some of these challenges like depression, some of the things like some of the heart disease actually have been proven to also be caused by some of the thought. Of course, the food we eat and we consume, but also the type of thought that we entertain every day. Now, that book, the only limitation that I always found with that book was that it tells me the what but not the how, right? It doesn't tell me exactly how do I go from this pattern of negative thinking or this pattern of thoughts of defeat, the thoughts that have been holding me captive, to becoming this person that I am today. I'm talking about me, or becoming the person that Adam is, or becoming a person who went down to the spiral of depression, to becoming a person who lives more hopefully, joyfully. Is that enough to tell you what's wrong? But also, it's important, I believe, to tell you how do I fix it? How do I go from who I am to who I want to be? The book is divided in 4 different chapters and 4 different parts. There's several chapters, but it's 4 different parts. The first part talks about the replacement principle, kind of really goes into just identifying, going to the bottom of knowing, okay, this is the problem that I have. The second part of it now goes into how do you rewire? Because you remember we talked about this before. And this has been proven maybe the last 50 years or so, where they were finally able to get some MRIs of the brain. And they realized that when you repeat something consistently, when you do something every day, what happens in your brain, and this happens actually physically in your brain, is that your brain creates these connections that are called neural pathways. It's like, I don't know if you've ever been to a forest or to a park that was full of grass. And then you use this road every single day. Eventually, where the grass was growing, if you keep on using it, you keep on stepping on the same grass, you end up creating some type of pathway. And this is the same way your brain works. Every time you adopt a habit, is that your brain physically changes. And the term that they are calling nowadays in neuroscience is called neuroplasticity, meaning that your brain changes forms as you adapt, as you do a habit. And that's why sometimes it's hard to get rid of things like depression or things like addictions, because your brain has already created these pathways. And changing a habit, your brain wants to go back to this is what I'm used to. But now you need to have a different strategy about how do you stop using this pathway that your brain has already created to using a different pathway until, like when you walk again in the park, and that you keep on using the same way, it creates a pathway. But if you stop, the grass will start growing back up on that neural pathway that you had already created. And this is the same way it works. So the second point here talks about how do you rewire your brain to do the things that you want it to do. The third part talks about reframing, the reframing principle. You've had this picture of your life in your mind, and this picture that has caused you to think a certain way, to behave a certain way. And the reframing principle goes about, this is the picture that I have, but this is the picture that I want to have. And it teaches you how do you reframe your life to look at a different picture when you look at yourself. And the last principle we talk about, rejoicing principle. The rejoice principle, I can't remember. There's a book that I was reading a few months ago, maybe maybe last year or early this year, it says that I don't change by feeling bad about myself. There's no way you can change if you keep on feeling bad about yourself when you make a mistake and then you condemn yourself, you beat yourself down. There's no way you're making change every time you keep on feeling bad about yourself. The only way to feel bad about yourself is sometimes to celebrate the result, to celebrate the little achievement, as minute as they might be, to learn to celebrate them. We noticed something with our son, Plamedy and I, Adam Blaze. We noticed something as he's growing up, and it's amazing. I think raising a child is one of the most amazing experience one can ever go through. So one thing with Adam Blaze, the way we enforce habits in them is by celebrating him. So every time, for example, the fridge start making the noise that the fridge is open, beep 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 beep, and Adam Blaze, we call him Adam Blaze, go close the fridge, go close the fridge. At first, he wasn't understanding what we were saying, but eventually he started picking out that go close the fridge means to shut the fridge, to shut the doors of the fridge. And when he shut the doors, we come after him and be like, yo, good job, Adam Blaze. And every time the fridge will start beeping without us saying anything, he will literally go shut the fridge door and then look at us, expecting us to give him some type of reward. And that's the way your brain works. If you keep on rewarding your brain for good things, then your brain is kind of really tricking your brain into believing that, okay, eating veggies is a good thing. Little things like, yay, good job, Mark, today you ate veggies. Little things like that can actually help you instill some habits in you. All right. The first point that Pastor Greg makes here, and I think I've talked about this in the previous episode that we talked about. It says that our lives are always moving in the direction of our strongest thoughts. Your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest thought. And now this is our question of the week. Where are your thoughts leading you? Again, our question of the week. Where are your thoughts leading you? Now, if you don't like where your thoughts are leading you, maybe it's time that we get into work and we find out how to change where your thoughts are leading you. First of all, we start by changing your thoughts, the pattern of the thought that you've created, maybe over the years, maybe over 5 years, maybe over 10, maybe over 15, maybe over 20 years. But we can change it by starting today. There's this saying I really like. It's a story about a doctor. She had a beautiful picture of a tree in her office. And every time this gentleman came to her office and always asked, one time he came, he saw the tree, was like, man, that's beautiful. He said, what's that tree for? He's like, well, that tree is in my backyard. I was like, wow, that tree is really beautiful. I wish I had a tree like that in my backyard. And the doctor told him, the best day to plant a tree is 25 years ago. The next best day to plant a tree is today. It took her 25 years for the tree to grow to what it was. It took her 25 years for the tree to become what it was. But a lot of times we are in a society, my pastor liked to call it the microwave society, where we want to put something, wait for 5 minutes and be done. Life doesn't work that way. So if you've developed a certain habit over the last 20 years, don't think that you're getting rid of it in 2 weeks. That's not going to work. I mean, it's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's going to take some effort. That's the point I'm trying to send across. It's going to take some effort. And sometimes it may take a week. Sometimes it may take a month. Sometimes it may take as long as a year. But you will never know if you don't put in the work or if you stop midway. That's why it's important that we get into it and we learn how to do it. Now, the 3-step process that Craig Groeschel suggests here about changing your thought. The first thing is that changing your life eventually, because if you change your thought, eventually you will change your life. The first thing is you think about what you think about, right? And I know there's a gentleman last time who was talking about this on our YouTube channel. He said, I can't remember, I can't call exactly the word, the term that he used, but it was something like meta thinking, or like my brother Zeph likes to call it the 2D thinking, right? You're thinking the layered thinking, right? You think about a thought, but then you have another thought that evaluates what you think about. Now, the second thing is you start putting in practice the things that you think about. We talked about this before. Thinking about something is not enough, and I think that's where I've always had this argument with the law of attraction that says, just think about it long enough and you're going to attract it eventually. No, 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 it doesn't work that way. After you've thought about something, you actually need to put into action whatever that you're thinking, whatever that you want to achieve. And it's not everything that you think about that you're going to achieve. That's just the reality. But there's more chances of achieving something that you think about than there are of not of achieving something you're not thinking about at all. So if you want to achieve something, the first thing is that you think about it. The second thing is that you start putting in practice. You gotta have a plan. How am I going to do this? And the third thing that Craig Groeschel talks about here is the experience. You start experiencing either the pain or the benefits of putting into action whatever you've been thinking about. Now, let's talk about this a little bit. If you're thinking about, something negative, eventually you think about like, oh, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. The thought lingers in your mind long enough that you start behaving as a person who wasn't good at what you think you're not good at. And eventually you start feeling the pain of your bad thoughts that is translated into bad actions. The same way can be translated when you think about something positive. Every time you think about a joyful thought, a beautiful memory that crystallizes into your action, maybe you're smiling now because you're thinking about something that this is so beautiful, makes you smile, and maybe start creating some connection. Now let's do this. For 2 seconds, think about one of the most beautiful memories of your life. If you're not driving, if you're in a safe place, just for 2 seconds, or even 5, even 10, think about one of the most beautiful memories of your life and close your eyes. Do you know why I'm smiling? If you're watching on YouTube, you'll probably see me smiling because some memories just bring me joy. Some memories bring me peace. And now, if you keep on repeating the process of good memories, of good souvenirs, or good things that have happened to you, it crystallizes into an action. And the action may be smiling. The action may be just being joyful, just being more generous, just, saying hi to a person because you remember that beautiful moment. And eventually that starts turning your life around. Craig Groeschel says that a lot of things that we face, like a lot of things that we face, like addictions, some form of depression, anxiety, are rooted in faulty and negative thinking. In the first chapter now, it talks about your perception is reality. Whatever you perceive in life eventually becomes, to some extent, your reality. Again, I've always said to some extent, the 99.9%, there's always the 0.001% where it does not happen, and the exception always confirms the rule. But most of the time, what we think about, the perception that we have, create the reality that happens to us. There's a story that Craig Groeschel shares in this that I believe that we benefit all of us, and I'll try to finish this first part today, so that next time we talk more about the practical, the rewiring principle, which is more practical than the first part where it's just laying the foundation. There's a story that I heard a few years ago about this elephant. This elephant was born and they put a chain to his foot. And they took the chain and they tied it to a tree. And for a long time, the elephant was trying to pull away, but he never was able to. He was trying to pull himself away, and the chain kept on hurting him. So the elephant internalized in his mind that he didn't have enough strength to pull that. That was the first picture they saw, the showed. The second picture shows the same elephant with a little rope on his leg tied to a plastic chair. Literally a plastic chair that my son Adam Blaze, who's only 18 months old, can actually push. But the elephant would stay in place, believing that he did not have enough strength to pull away the chair. And oftentimes, that's the way we condition our minds. If you've believed something for so long, it becomes like a self-made prison. Even when you have the strength to get away or out of that prison, but the thought has been internalized for so long in your mind that what you perceive has become your reality. I'll give an example. I've talked about this before on the podcast, and Adam actually knows this story pretty well because we've talked about this extensively. I grew up thinking that I was stupid. That's just the thought. But how did I start? It started off with failing. I believe I was in first grade, and I really flunked first grade. Came back home, and of course, my parents were not very very happy with me because I was also a very distracted child. I was always running around doing stuff, and my grades were reflecting how I wasn't spending time doing my homework. I was missing on homework. I was doing this and that, and my parents were doing their very best to help me. I never failed the class. I went to the next grade, to second grade, but my grades were not as good as my brothers and sisters and everybody around me. Slowly by slowly, it started creating this type of identity in my mind, thinking that I'm not smart. Now, that was the thought. It doesn't mean that I wasn't smart. No, actually, when I look back, and every time I look back about how I grew up and stuff like that, I was actually a pretty smart kid. But because I believe in my head that I wasn't smart, I started I started looking for evidence to prove that I wasn't. So every time I flunked a test, let's say for example, the passing grade was 70 and I got a 65. I'll say to myself, oh, you see, you got a 65 because you're not smart. And then the next time again, when I get an 80, for example, a B or an A, a 90, I'll go to my mind and go like, oh, I was lucky this time, but I'm not smart. And every single thing I started doing started reinforcing in my head the thought that I wasn't smart. This got crystallized or maybe became worse when I went to high school. And I remember this history professor looked at me and told me, "You really dumb." And that's why I always tell adults, be careful what you tell the children, because your opinion, like Jim Quick says, your opinion of a child becomes his reality. And from that time on, I started thinking to myself, wow, I'm really not smart. I'm really not smart. I'm really not smart. And guess what? I'm not smart. I'm not studying. I'm not smart. I'm not going to do an effort to do my homework because I'm not smart. And because of the pattern of thought that I kept on carrying on myself, became a self-made prison to myself. And it's just not about being smart or being intelligent or whatever. It's even about, I talk to people sometimes and people tell me, I can't read books. I just don't have it. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have it? When it comes to books, I always say there's not people who have it and people who don't have it. No, it's just people who do it and people who don't. This is just a reality. Because I've been on both sides of the coin and I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've been the guy who didn't read a single book until after high school. You wonder how did that happen? Yes, I'm from the Congo and that is possible. And if you've been in any other country than the United States of America, it's very possible to go through, your 12 grades without to go to high school, to get actually an high school diploma without, I'm not saying that you're not reading mathematics books or French books. No, I'm talking about picking up a novel, picking up a book just to read. I didn't read my books until I was like, I think my last year of high school, or maybe let's say 11th grade. That's when I started reading books. And if it took me that long, as much as that tried to get me into reading books, I just didn't like them. And I thought because I didn't like them, books were just not my thing. But eventually I started reading books, and now I got to a point like the last 2 weeks, I believe I've read like 2 books. I'm almost done with my third book just in the last 2 weeks. And if I can get there from someone who never read a single book for more than 5, 6, 7 years, who can now read books, when I'm really applied to it, and I'm disciplined about spending half an hour every day reading a book. Yes, I can actually read a book every single week, and it's possible. And if it's possible for me, it's possible for you. But because you keep on thinking that I cannot read books, unless you have some type of sickness. I know some people really struggle to read books because of the type of sickness that they have. They see words shifting on the page. I talked to a lady who told me that story. And unless you have something like that, everybody can learn how to read books, and it's possible. And Craig Groeschel says that most of the prisons that we face are non-existent. They actually don't exist. These are the lies that have been keeping you from doing what you want to do. I like what it says here on page 10. It says that the battle of your life is always won or lost in your mind. The only way to change the pattern of your negative thinking is by confronting them. Yep. You cannot change something you do not know. That's the first thing, right? If you don't know that you have this pattern of negative thinking in your mind, how are you going to change them? The second thing is that you cannot change what you do not confront. Now, here's the problem. Most of the times, we refuse to confront our negative thoughts because we do not know what the other side of the coin look like. I'll tell you a reality. I'll tell you a story. At the beginning of this year, maybe toward the end of the year, after my injury, I started gaining weight. I wasn't watching my diet. I couldn't exercise anymore. And I spent a lot of time in front of my computer. And after the computer, I was in the living room for a few minutes, and I was back on my computer. Causing us actually, Plamidi telling me, hey, you're spending way too much time on your computer. And of course, spending too much on your computer requires a lot of sugar because you're using your brain intensively, and you require a lot of drinks. And I started getting into the coffee. That I don't drink a lot of coffee because of my acid reflux, but you start getting into the juices and all that. I gain weight. I believe, about 20 pounds, maybe 15 to 20 pounds. Now, coming to 2023, I'm like, you know what? I need to lose weight. This is just not who I am. This is not the way I like to do, the way I do. I get into this diet program, and within maybe 30 days, 40 days, I lose 15 pounds. Now, I'm comfortable, but I'm looking in front of the mirror, and this is the first thing that happened that had never happened before. I freaked out. I got scared. I was already so comfortable with my weight, the way I was, that I could no longer picture an image of myself being 185 pounds, being 190 pounds. I could no longer have that picture. I started finding comfort in getting as much weight as I did than in being the person that I wanted to be. I started being scared. And that's the same thing that happened to our thoughts. Do you ever wonder why do abusee, if that's even a word, people who are abused always seem to go back to the abusers? It's because they're so used to that. That's the only reality they may have known their lives, or maybe that period of their time, that it's so hard for them to move from the known to the unknown, even if the unknown is more beneficial or more beautiful than the known. But the reality is that most of us, we struggle to move from the known to the unknown because the unknown is scary. And to me, that losing weight became scary. I started putting on some pants, and they weren't fitting me the way I wanted them anymore. And my jacket, my shirt became kind of a little baggy. I was like, man, is this really what I want for my life? And of course, because I wasn't lifting weight anymore, yes, my shirts and some pants really started feeling baggy. And I got scared. And a lot of us is that it's not that we don't want to move away from this situation. It's not that we don't want to move away from this way of thinking. It's just that we find so much comfort in it and we are scared of the unknown. Craig Groeschel says that if you believe something long enough, even if it's not true, it becomes true to you. And this is something else that's called in psychology or, in neuroscience, what people call delusions. And I believe all of us, at some point of our lives, we face some type of delusions. At least I have. Oh, as a child, it's pretty scared. Being an introvert didn't help me a whole lot, but I'll sit down there and think there was a monster under the bed. I know some of you can relate to that. But a monster never existed. I'll literally sleep when the lights are off and look over the wall where I was hanging my clothes and my jacket, and it looks like a person looking right straight at me. And as soon as I turn back on the light, I had nobody. It's just me looking at my jacket or my hood that looks like a real person. Delusions. And the problem is that a lot of people live in so much delusions that they no longer distinguish the difference between what's real and what's not. I don't know if you face people who are so delusional that they always think that someone is doing something against them. Of course, some of them can be clinical. I do not want to discount that. But a lot of delusions that we create are self-made because you've believed in something for so long that you actually believe that it is true. Yet, it is not. Now, how are lies formed? Three things are noted down here. Something that was told to us, something like I gave an example before, you're not smart, right? The second thing is that a bad experience, right? The bad experience, I'll give an example of that shortly. But the third thing is that repeated failure, right? If you keep on failing at something, then you think you're not just good at it. And you start forming these lies, you start forming these mental pictures and thinking to yourself, I'll never amount to anything that's beneficial. I'll never amount to anything that's helpful. Now, talking about a bad experience, I'll tell you a little story. My first dating attempt was a disaster, was a really disaster. The girl looks at me in front of my friends and her friend, and then she told everybody that she didn't like me, I was ugly, I could never be with her. She was kind of right because I've never been with her and I don't regret it, But the reality is that at that moment I was shattered. I was broken, and I know some of my friends remember this story. Gary Kalamba is in Boston, Eve and Yannick. I know some of them actually do remember this story about this little girl literally in front of everybody looking at me and telling me, "Man, you're ugly. I can never be with you." Man, it broke me. I'll tell you that for sure. And then my second one wasn't wasn't any successful either. There are a few problems here that I see. The first one is that what business did I have at 10 years old trying to date a girl? I don't know what I was thinking. And even when I tried when I was 14, I still do not know what I was thinking. And today I actually joke with Plamedy about this sometimes. I'm like, man, if Adam Bliss comes back here and he's 10 years old and he's telling me he's talking to this girl, I don't know what I'm going to do. Because sometimes just like, what business do you have as a child talking to girls? Like, do your homework, play. You have a long life before you. But simply because it didn't work for me on my first and second attempt and maybe third attempt, I don't think it worked until like my fourth attempt actually to date a girl. But simply because it didn't work, I'm happily married to a very beautiful woman, and I don't regret that time. And sometimes simply because you've had a bad experience in life doesn't mean that your life is a bad experience altogether. And the other thing is the repeated failure. You keep on trying something and then you keep on failing at it. You keep on failing at it. I was reading something actually from this wonderful book. I believe that we have Mr. Sen. A few weeks from today, it's called "Forget Everything and Reset." This is one of the most wonderful and amusing books I've ever read in my life. Teaches a lot of lessons here, and I can't wait to have Mr. Sen to talk about this book. But he talked about, I believe, in the fourth chapter, he said that Albert King says that if it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck at all. And sometimes life can feel like that for some people, or it's like failure after failure after failure. I actually was reading the story of this lady on LinkedIn. She She lost her job. She got laid off after 15 or 16 years of working in one company. And if you've never been laid off, I'll tell you this, it's a scary moment. Sometimes it's like, what's next? What's going to happen tomorrow? And especially if you have been at a company for that long in your life, it can really be scary to navigate those uncharted territories. Now, the lady got laid off, and she got one job. She got one offer maybe 2 or 3 months later, and she said she applied for 150 different positions. 150 different positions. After 16 years of being the best at what she does, after 16 years of being in this company and being loyal to this company, she get laid off, and then 150 different applications. Now think about it. Maybe some people would have given a 50. Maybe some people would have given 100 and be like, you know what? Maybe this is not for me anymore. And repeated failures can cause this mental image in your head, thinking that you're not good enough. But that's such a reality. Simply because you failed, it doesn't make you a failure. And that's the truth. Simply because you failed doesn't make you a failure. The first thing that how our lives are formed that I noted down as I was reflecting on this book is environment, right? Where we grow up. And sometimes where we are, you hang out with a bunch of people that are completely negative. Trust me, you're gonna catch up. You're going to catch up. It doesn't matter how long you wait on it. And I've seen that happening in my life, some places, and hobby. I won't talk about it today, but I'll talk about it in the next episode, maybe in the future, or in the next blog. The next blog that's coming, I believe, next week. There's a blog. The first blog came out last Friday. It's called Genesis. It's an amazing blog where I talk about the story from Bounded Growth, how we got started, and the struggles of perfection, wanting to be perfect, and how those things can actually stop you from starting. Check it out on our webpage. It's www.unboundedgrowth.org/blogs. You can see all our blogs there, and as I talked about this before, we have 4 bloggers including Adam and me. There's 2 more bloggers that'll be joining us, and and the growth nuggets. Our first email went out last Friday, and we we try to grow and give you as much content to chew on, to meditate on, and to think on every day. But environment can be one of those things that affect the way we think, and sometimes it's just safe and sane for you to change environment if the environment in which you are is not helping you, or is keeping you is keeping your thoughts in a certain way. Now, a lie, Craig Groeschel says here that a lie that you believe as truth will affect you as if it was true. And one thing I like about this book, at the end of the chapter, it gives these wonderful exercises. So the first exercise at the end of this first chapter is called the thought audit, right? Where he suggests that you go and you start asking yourself, what are the type of thoughts that are dominating your mind? If your life is always moving in the direction of your stronger thought, don't you think it will be healthy to think about what you think about? And we paste the link of this in the description. The first disclaimer I want to make, I strongly encourage you to get a copy of the book, right? If you cannot get a physical copy, try to get a PDF copy, right? And if you still cannot get it, try to get the workbook. The workbook, at least, try to get it. You can watch the sermons for free on YouTube. But we're going to put a link in the description of this episode. Someone decided to share some of the content of this book. We're not sharing it, right? But the person decided to share. We're just going to put the link out there where you can see the question that he asked in the book about how you can go ahead and do a thought audit, right? How you can audit your thought. I'll just read a few of them here. For example, one of the questions that he asked, do I find myself skeptical of others? Do I lean toward imagining the first worst scenario? Someone who's always thinking about the worst that could happen to them. Do your thoughts reflect your faith? Some of them is like, are your thoughts building you up? The other question that I thought was interesting here is that, are my unhealthy thoughts keeping me from the life that I want? So the goal of this first exercise is just to have this analysis where you are honest with yourself, right? Keep in mind, right? I'm not reading this, right? Adam is not reading this. Josh or Zeph, none of them is reading this. Your partner is probably not reading this. It's your journal. That's why we encourage you to journal. Read the questions. Find them in the link in the link of the description of this video or this audio of this episode, and answer those questions and identify. You cannot confront what you do not know. You cannot change what you do not confront. All right. All right. Now, in the second chapter, he finished the first chapter with this quote that I would like to read. Who you are today is the results of the thoughts of your past. Who you become tomorrow will reflect what you think about today. I'll read it one more time. Who you are today is the result of the thoughts of your past, and who you become tomorrow will be the result of what you think today. So if what you think today is not the image of who you want to be tomorrow, it's time to sit back and start thinking about what you think about. Now, the second chapter here, and I've tried to finish the first part as I promised. I have about 20 minutes to the top of the hour here. It talks about becoming a thought warrior, to fight, right? Because here's the thing. Changing your thought, as I explained before, is not something that happens automatically. Why? Because your brain has already created these connections. Your brain has already created these neural pathways. Your brain is so used to doing certain things. I'll explain to you how this goes. If you're right-handed, do this exercise. Tomorrow morning, when you brush your teeth, don't use your right hand. Try to use your left hand. And you see how it's fun, right? Today I can brush with both hands. I can brush with my right and left hand. It's the same way when I was playing basketball, I usually train with my left hand. I was a point guard, and I usually train with my left hand more than I did my right hand because my right hand was more natural to me, but my left hand required me work. But just try to do it. At first, it's challenging. Or try. Today, I still can do it. Try to write yourself a note. If you're left-handed, try to write with your right hand. And you've never done it before. And if you're right-handed, try to write with your left hand. Or have you ever seen people who don't have arms, but they use their feet to write, and they actually write sometimes better than you do? Try that. Try to put the pen on your toes and try to write, and tell me how that is. It's challenging. It's work. And you know why it's work? Because all your life, your brain has created this pathway so that you don't have to remember how to do certain things every morning. Now think about it. If you had to remember how to brush your teeth every single morning, how fun would that be? I don't think it'll be that much fun with it. But because you've done it over and over, it plays to your advantage. The only problem is when it's something negative, your brain still creates pathways. Now, your brain doesn't know if this is positive or this is negative. No, that you do. But your brain doesn't. It's just there, executing on the command that you're giving it. So when you tell it, okay, it's good to do this and that, your brain keeps in mind that it's good to do this and that. Even when you start abusing drugs and substances and things of that nature, even when you start, sleeping late, your brain just adapts to it. Now, you have to fight if you want to change the pattern of your thoughts. And the fight is not easy. It's not just the 1, 2, 3, and this we happen. And the problem in these generations, we don't know how to fight. We don't even fight for marriages anymore. Just like it doesn't work, I'm tired, I'm out of here. No, that's not life. You try something once or twice, it doesn't work, you give up. Why do you give up? And one of the things that I realize in our generations, we live in such a deserving mentality type of generation. We have this deserving mentality. It's like, I deserve this. And if it doesn't work, I quit. But that's not life. Sometimes stuff works, sometimes it don't. And I think some of it is also created by society. Today in America, you get medals for showing up. You showed up to a race, you came in last, and you still get a medal. The problem is when you work in society and when you go in real life, you don't get a medal for showing up. You don't get a medal for cleaning dishes in the house. You don't get a medal for cleaning your house. You don't get a medal for taking care of your kids. Those are just stuff you are supposed to do as a person, But the first thing you have to understand is that it's a fight, and you have to fight it. On page 30 here, Craig Groeschel says that we are not ready to fight, and we numb our reality to things around us. There's something interesting on this page, and I would like to actually read it. It said that the problem with many people is that they don't wage war at all. Satan, and for the sake of it of this episode, whatever it is, you can call them negative patterns or thought or whatever, but I'll read what's written here. It said that Satan is assaulting us with evil, is delivering blows of deception and bombarding us with lies, but we can be oblivious to the attacks. It says, as a result, our lives are not what we want them to be. We numb ourselves to reality. We long for more but settle for less. We keep ourselves too busy and distracted. We buy things attempting to impress people and feel some mysterious, inner endless voice. We scroll mindlessly on social media, feeling left out, left behind, and unimportant, and we compare our dull lives to everyone else's highlight reels. We do our best to pretend that we are happy while a war rages around us, and as a result, we are losing battle after battle. Why? Because we chose not to fight. We choose not to fight. We choose to settle for peace. We choose to say, okay, you know what? This is not for me. Like I still remember this example Adam gave 2 episodes ago when he was talking about his aunt who said that she's just like a picture. She's in this world just to to show up. Everybody's here to succeed, but not her. She's just there to be who she is, and she's without any ambitions. She doesn't have any goals. She doesn't want to become anybody. That's pretty much the type of person or the type of situation that Craig Groeschel is describing here. When you don't take up the fight, nobody will do it for you. No, Craig Groeschel talks about something here. In the Christendom, people call them strongholds, right? And in different faith, different religions, people call them different things. In science, scientists call them addictions and stuff of that nature. But the word that Craig Rochelle uses here is stronghold. So a stronghold, back in the days, it was like a fortress, right? When the enemy would attack a city, most cities had the fortress, and the leaders of the city we hide in the fortress, and the fortress was one of those places like built to last. And some fortresses, like in history, in some European countries, you can actually see the fortresses still standing there after centuries, because the fortress was supposed to be that place that kept people. And Paul, the apostle, is giving this example about destroying the strongholds, destroying those fortresses. The problem is, once you believe a lie long enough in your life, the lie becomes like the truth. And it creates this stronghold that sometimes, to get rid of it, you really has to fight. And Craig Rochelle says here that a stronghold can be something hidden. Like in old times, political leaders hid in the stronghold. Once you discover what is keeping you hostage, you can go fight against it. Now, how do you defeat the negative strongholds in your mind, or the negative pattern of thoughts in your mind? This is what Craig Groeschel suggests here. And when I was meditating on this, when I was reading the book, I started writing some of my notes. So some of my notes would be kind of going alongside what you're saying here. But the first thing, in the first exercise, you go about identifying, right? Identifying all this thought. And that's why it's important to work through this exercise, because you cannot go to step 2 unless you do step 1. So we talked about identifying those problems, right? Now you know that the thoughts that are dominating your life are negative, right? The thoughts that are dominating your thoughts, thoughts of depression, thoughts of thinking that someone will abandon you, thinking that someone will do you wrong as your father did to you, thinking that you'll not succeed because you've always had this pattern of failure, or like Albert King, thinking that if it wasn't for bad luck, you won't have any luck at all. Now you've identified those issues. The first thing that you want to do is define them, right? Because you can't defeat, Craig Rochelle says you cannot defeat what you do not define. Changing your actions is one thing, but the behavior pattern that repeats itself, we always come back. So if you say, I want to lose weight and tomorrow I'm going to eat a carrot, and then you eat a carrot tomorrow and the next day you go back to hamburger, or you go back to a milkshake. I love milkshakes actually. You go back to a milkshake or something like that. It will never change until you start taking some repeated action. And I think James Clear talks about it actually, and this is where it becomes very important to talk about your identity, because James Clear says that you cannot change your behavior until you change who you believe you are, right? You cannot change your tardiness behavior until you believe that you're someone who comes on time, right? Who shows up on time. And this was one of the books that helped me review again my confession list, right? Zeph and I talked about it, I think, in the second episode of this season, where I talk about having this confession list where you start rehearsing and repeating the things that you believe that you are. All right. Now, the second thing that Craig Groeschel suggests here is to rely on a power bigger than yourself. I'm a Christian, so I believe in Jesus. I believe in the power of the Holy Spirit. I believe in God, right? But not everybody that listens to us is a Christian. But whether you're Christian or not, believing in a power greater than yourself and believing that that power can help you to do the things that you want to do is actually one of the things that can help you overcome the pattern of your negative thoughts, your addictions, or whatever. This is what the AA, the Alcoholic Anonymous program offers. They offers a 12-step program, and they've helped a lot of people to overcome their addictions to alcohol. The first two steps here, and I believe that's what Craig Groeschel is talking about as well, is that we admit. The first thing that the AA teaches is that we admit that we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. You cannot change something until you admit that you have a problem. You cannot fix a problem that you don't admit that you have. Like, I wear glasses. I've been wearing glasses for the last, I'll say 10, 15 years. No, 15 years-ish. The only way that I fix my problem is by acknowledging that without my glasses, I'm having difficulty seeing. I'm having difficulties, focusing. I can deal with light. I can deal with this and that. But until I admit that it is a problem, I can't fix it. Regardless of what you are facing, until you admit that it is a problem to you, you cannot fix it. And the second step here, I'll just stop at number 2 or number 3 here. It says that came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. A power greater than yourself. Now, the third thing they talk about here at the AA is that make a decision to turn our will and our lives over the power and the care of God as we understood Him. So it's important. The truth is, the world is much bigger than yourself. And if you grew up in Africa, I'll tell you one thing for sure. You know that there's an existence of a spiritual world. For most people, at least, who grew up in Africa. I grew up in in Eastern Congo, and I've seen some stuff that are not physically proven. I mean, you can't prove it in physics. You cannot prove it in science. You just cannot. And once you start understanding there's a power bigger and greater than yourself, learning to surrender and turn your will to that power. In my case, is God, is Jesus, is my faith, my Christian faith. And I learned over the years that some battles, I can't fight them on my own. So I turned them over to God. And we got together, we can fight through this. And it's important for you to find something that's much bigger than you. So the second exercise in the end of this second chapter here, Craig Groeschel talks about identifying the lies that you believe. You cannot defeat what you do not define. Now, the first step was about identifying the pattern of your thoughts, right? You went through it, you saw the type of thoughts that are always carrying on in your mind, the type of thoughts that you're always thinking and, thinking that you're always defeated and all that. The second thing is identifying the lies that you believe. Now, identifying the lies that you believe, it's a process, right? It's a process because, and I think it talks about it in the third chapter that I'm going to get into right now. It is a process. You have to understand how did this get started, right? In order for me to start believing that I'm smart and start behaving like a smart person and start doing things that smart people do, I had to understand how did it start. And it was crazy because I had to go 10, 15 years earlier to identify, oh, I remember I came back home and I had this bad grade, and I started feeling as if I wasn't smart because everybody in the neighborhood had better grades than I did. And when I was playing with my friends, they told me, they kept on reminding me how I was a C student and this and that. And then I remember this professor telling me that I wasn't smart. And I remember this happened in my life. I'm not here to blame them. I'm not here to say, because all of it worked out for my good. I'm one of those people that really believe in Romans 8:28 that all things work together for the good of those who love God. And and I believe that everything in my life, all the experiences and everything that I've gone through has worked out for my good. But I had to go back to those moments and identify why is it that I'm feeling this way. I remember one time before we got married, Plamidi was telling me a story and I got aggravated. And I started thinking to myself, what is causing me? Because of course I already had the knowledge that about all this stuff, that I went back and I started thinking to myself, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? And the problem is with most of us, we are not ready to confront our realities. We are not ready to sit down and say, okay, this is a problem. Why do I feel the way that I feel? Someone can catch off the traffic and you all of a sudden aggravated. Someone else gets off the traffic is like, "Oh, let's move on." You know, why is it that you're feeling the way you're feeling? Someone can tell you, I don't like your shoes. Some people, they really get into it and they're really even ready to fight. Some other people, they're like, you don't like them? It's okay. Why do you feel the way you feel about certain situation? And that will help you identify the light that you believe. And I'll finish up with this here, where it talks about it more in depth in chapter 3. It said replacing the old lies with a new truth. Now, we talked about this right at the beginning, and I was explaining that your brain create these neural pathways. The reality is that you just don't get into your brain and start erasing completely a neural pathway. You just can't do that, right? Or even in a forest, you keep on using the same road. At some point, the grass is gone and the plants are off, and you create this neural pathway. You just don't wake up one morning and say, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. You try to cover it. It won't look like the rest of the grass around it. The way to change it is to stop using it. And I know this can sound cliche and can be challenging for some people, but John Hunt, I was listening to a program on the radio, Hope for the Heart, every night. I used to work the night shift, and on my way back, I'll catch her on the radio, and I used to listen to her advising people, a great advisor. And one time she was giving this example that always stuck with me. She said, oftentimes we try to not think about something by thinking about it. I'll explain, right? I struggle a lot with porn in the past. And sometimes I try not to think about porn by forcing myself to remove the porn images in my mind, but that doesn't work and never worked. She suggested that in order for you to remove that, think about something different, right? So every time a weird image like that will come to my mind, I will refocus. And we talk about that in the reframing principle. I'll refocus my mind to something completely different. I'll think about how I was playing basketball. I'll think about the great memories. I'll watch comedy. I'll listen to a sermon. That will take my mind away from that. But most of the times what we do is like, okay, this is, I've always liked doing this with people. I tell them, wait, close your eyes, right? And when I'll say a red ball, what do you think about? And of course, the mental image that comes to your mind is a red ball. Why not an elephant? And most of the times, it's like you're trying to get away. You're trying to get rid of the red ball in your mind by thinking about the red ball. No, just start thinking about the elephant, and the red ball will eventually go. But it's a fight. You have to put in the work. So in order for you to replace the old lies that you've believed by the new truth, the first thing you want to do is identify the problem. The second thing is ask yourself probing questions. And the third thing is to pinpoint the lie, to go to exactly lie, to the exact lie. All right. So I talked about this earlier a few minutes ago. Identifying the problem. For example, that you like alcohol. I'll talk about what I struggle with. Porn. I realized that I really did struggle with porn. Of course, some of the reasons is that I was exposed to it way too young. My brain was too young to understand certain things. I was 11 years old the first time my eyes were exposed to porn. And it became such a stronghold and it was really difficult to get rid of it. And now I knew that was my problem, right? That was the problem. I identified that was the problem. Now, probing questions. Some of the probing questions that I asked myself, for example, was, why do I watch it, right? And I tried to give myself excuses, and then the second question was like, when am I tempted to watch it, right? Is it at night? Is it during the day? Is it when I'm driving? Is it when I'm going to school? Then I found out, okay, it was happening at night. What season of my life am I tempted to watch it? And by asking myself all these probing questions, and Craig Groeschel has some wonderful probing questions. That's why I encourage you to get the book or at least check the link in the description and see those questions on chapter 3. One of the questions that I asked myself, and when I was asking myself all these questions, I got on to pinpointing exactly what was causing it. Is that I was tempted to watch porn when I was under stress. And porn became, unbeknownst to me, porn had become some type of medication for me. And every time I wanted to medicate myself, every time I wanted to feel better, to relieve the pressure of stress, I was turning to porn. The same way some people, to relieve the pressure of stress, they turn to alcohol. Some other people, it's shopping. You wonder why your Amazon card or your credit card has $1,200 on it? Because you keep on shopping these things that you do not need. Or why maybe you find yourself 6 hours later, and if you have if you have a phone or whatever, you just check your time you spend on your phone. And some people hit like 15 hours on their phone, 15 screen time hours. That's crazy. And do you wonder why? Because you're there all day, going up and up and up and up and up and up and up. You don't even realize that the time is going by. The question is, what is causing you to do that? And you can only find the answer to the question you ask. The truth is, if you don't ask the question, you'll never get the answers. And most of us want answers, but we are not ready or we are not willing to ask the tough questions to ourselves. Another example I wrote down here, is finances. I know a lot of people do struggle with finance. A lot of people do struggle with discipline. Excuse me. Now, once you download an app like Rocket Money, right? Connect it to your bank account, your credit card, or whatever, and then you start tracking your expenses. If you've struggled with finance, trust me, this is one of those eye-opening exercises where you look at it and you go like, oh my God, and realize how much money, for example, you spend on Amazon or how much money you spend on eBay. At some point, and I still don't have it, I had to uninstall eBay from my phone because eBay was like social media for me. When I didn't have anything to do, especially, purchasing all this podcasting equipment. I really love videography. I love photography. And I'll spend just my time on computer, scrolling. And every time like I had something was on sale, even for 1%, I'll go ahead and buy it. And realize one time I had more than $1,000 spent on eBay. And I was like, what am I buying on eBay that's costing me this much money? And of course, it wasn't in a single week. It was over a year, but still, that was pretty significant. And when I look at all the stuff that I bought, yes, some of them I used them. Some of them were for the podcast. Some of them have actually been helping us making money. But some of them were completely useless. And when you download something like Rocket Money and start looking at your finances and stuff like that, then you start identifying, okay, I've bought a lot of clothes and some of them I haven't worn them. I have a lot of shoes here and some of them I've never touched them. Or I have a lot of books. I used to buy books just for the sake of buying books. Yes, I like it. I like the title. Someone talked about it. I'll go ahead and buy it. Yes, good investment. But then if it sits on my shelf for 5 years and I never read it, is it really a good investment for me? So you ask yourself those probing questions. Like you can find out, for example, Rocket Money, that most of your money was spent, your weekly spending, right? You find out that most of your money is spent on Thursday. Now you ask yourself the question, why do I spend most of my money on Thursday? Now you start wondering, okay, what do I do on Thursday night? Do I go to the movie? Do I do this and that? What exactly is going on Thursday? Do I have a test on Friday that's causing me to spend more time on Amazon on Thursday and finding myself doing all that? And then another question you can ask yourself is that when did this habit start? When did this thought start? When did they start dominating my mind? At what point in history of your life did they start? And then the other question you can ask yourself, why do you feel the way you feel, right? If you feel like you always feel defeated, you always feel like you're low, you always feel like you're always picking out the pieces of all the crap that people leave behind them, the question can be, why do I feel this way? And then another one Craig Groeschel asks here is like, what is the real need that I'm trying to meet here? And that's a good one. Because most of the times you try to meet your wants, right? A phone is great, but what need are you trying to meet? Need of communication, right? But if whatever you're doing, you are only trying to meet certain wants and you do not identify the need that you're trying to meet, of course you're going to make mistakes over and over again. And then he starts talking about the replacement principle. This is what James Clear talked about creating a new identity. You cannot change your habits until you change your identity. You cannot change your habit until you change something you believe deep inside of you are. You can't change your habit of tardiness until you believe you're a person who shows up on time. You cannot change your habits of depression until you believe that you're someone who is depression free. Not even depression free. You believe that you're someone who's happy, someone who's joyful, someone who's prosperous, someone who's at peace. And on this, at the end of this third chapter in this first part, James Clear, Craig Groeschel talks about the replacement principle. Once you've pinpointed the lie, replace the lie with the truth. Personally, as a Christian, there's a lot of truth that the Word of God teaches me, and I usually go about whatever lie is in there that I believe, like I'm not smart, or that I'm not handsome. I'll go back to the Bible and say I've been beautifully and wonderfully created, and just a truth like that will help me overcome some of this stuff that we do struggle with. Some of this stuff that you don't really spend a lot of time thinking about. Ladies and gentlemen, we're already do 5 minutes past the top of the hour, and it's with this that I'll be finishing up today this episode. So we did talk about the first part of the book, and I'll just review it quickly here. And it has the first 3 chapters of the book. That the first part is the replacement principle, removing the lies and replacing them with the truth. And the third chapter actually talks about replacing the replacement. But you need to identify those lies. You need to identify the type of feelings that you have. You need to identify the type of thoughts that are always dominating your mind. We talked about how your perception is your reality. We talked about becoming a thought warrior, and then we finished up with replacing the all lies with a new truth. Now, the second part, the third exercise here, talks about declaring the truth, and that's where you start creating a declaration plan for yourself. I have one for myself. I haven't been doing very well at reviewing it, but next week is one of my goals to every morning sit down and review my declaration plan and actually make those declarations. I learned them about from Zig Ziglar, but I didn't understand the why behind them. But when I read this book in 2021, I started understanding the why and why it was so important to have a declaration plan. And next week we start talking about rewire principle. We'll definitely try to be here next week. If Adam is not available, if I'm not available, one of us will be here for sure, so that we can all continue with this book. And I hope in the next 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks we finish up this book, and we probably have an episode or 2 episodes out there with some of our guests that we've been trying to get on for the last few weeks now, and I'm really excited. Mr. Tyson Bounty, my mentor, we talk about career coaching. How do you not make deadly mistakes for your career? Or if you've made some deadly mistakes, how can you recover from them? How can you negotiate better your salary? How the power vision, how can the power vision change the way you think and you look at life? And then we talk about the fear. I'll forget everything, and we said we send Abdullah. Maybe this month, maybe next month, we definitely have him on the podcast so we can talk about his life. A real estate investor, retired at the age of 38 because of the good investment that he had made in real estate, and taught us one of the most important principles: OPM, other people's money. How can you become wealthy? By using and investing other people's money and getting the return from your investment. There's also this wonderful book that I'm reading that I think is very inspirational. It's called Make Your Bed by Admiral William McRaven. wonderful book, telling you how the little changes in your life can actually compound into big and great changes. Talking about his own life, he's kind of like an autobiographic book, but not really. But it's a really, really amazing book. I'm really loving it. And of course, alongside all the books that we've been reading, ladies and gentlemen, is with this that I'll be finishing. Again, our website is www.unboundedgrowth.org. If you want to support us, now do not hesitate to send us your donations. So far, almost every single dollar that we've received has gone to support the education of the kids in Congo. We're not making any profit out of it. We just want to be out here and be helpful to others. Our growth nugget. The first email went out last Friday. We'll be having it every single week, and that's our goal. And that's part again of why your support means a lot to us, because it'll allow us to pay for things like MailChimp and subscription for our website, for our email, and all things of that nature. Of course, sometimes even to purchase these books that are actually helping us, so we can always keep this podcast free of charge to you. So our growth nugget is the type of email, short email that we send every week, giving you a tip on how you can grow, how you can become a better person. But also our blog is up and running. Go out there. There's a lot of topics. You'll find some topics on personal growth. You'll find some topics on leadership. You'll find some topics on hope. You'll find some topics on faith. If you're a faith person, you'll find topics on almost every single walk of life, and even some tips for real estate. You'll find them there. And we have some more bloggers in the future telling us the things that we need to do and how we can achieve them. All right. With that being said, I'll be seeing you next week. If it's your first time here, do not forget to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on your favorite podcasting platform, don't forget to hit follow. If you're listening to us on Google Podcast is about to go away, so we suggest that you move to Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. That's where you can easily find us and give us a follow, give us a like, give us a comment. It goes a very, very long way, and your feedback are always welcome. With that being said, I'll be seeing you next week. God bless you, and you have an amazing remainder of your week. Bye bye.